Hi, everybody. My name is Eron Iler, and I am with Fleetistics. And today we are here with Mitch Davis, who is from GPS Nashville. And today we're going to be talking about the installation of telematics, dashcam, other technology that goes into fleets. And Mitch is an expert and been doing this quite a while. And we thought it would be interesting to bring Mitch to you to hear, from an installer's perspective, what are the things that you need to be thinking about as you get ready to tackle an installation project? So, Mitch, tell us a little bit about yourself, how long you've been doing this, a little bit about your company, and we'll just kind of roll from there.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and help share some information to help the process go a lot smoother. I started with, I call it fleet GPS installations back around 2002. I worked in an area as a government contractor where we were installing GPS and different types of technologies on a very different scale. And I was approached by a little tiny company back then that just come over from Ireland called Fleetmatics. I had a meeting with a gentleman from Fleetmatics at our local airport, and he discussed their idea and their technology with me. And I said, well, that's all nice. And I told him, he asked me how much I wanted to install a device. I threw a number at him and he almost fell out of his chair. I said, we got to, remember, we're putting these things in. We're pulling taillights out and we're cutting holes in panels and we're making things look like they're not supposed to be there. It's like there's no trace of what we're doing. He said, no, 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 no. These are for plumbing companies and heating and air companies and whatnot. And I think the first year I installed maybe 5 devices.
Yep.
And here we are in 2024. And now we're up to, thousands of devices, per year, not just GPS, but we've gotten into dash cameras, multi-camera systems, tattletale systems for cargo, sensors and cranes, and yeah, just working on everything and anything. If it has an engine and wheels or tracks, more than likely we put something in, and with the exception of aircraft. So
Yeah.
it's been an interesting ride. That tiny little company was bought out. As time went on, we kept doing our usual thing, doing installs, working with customers, different products, new companies popped up. And I guess around 2016, this little tiny company went public, or they went public a few years before that. And then this other company called Verizon popped up and bought this little company that I was working with. Well, when they bought that little company, they said, keep doing what you're doing, but get more people, get bigger. We like your style. We like your concept. Get more people and train them to do it the way you're doing it. And we think it'll be a home run. Well, it was.
Hmm.
And we listened to them and, we grew with the company. And again, that little tiny company that just started, uh, you know, less than 20 years later was purchased for $2.4 billion in cash.
Right. Right.
So, diligence and hard work, will pay off. Knowing your business, knowing staying in your lane and sticking with what you do best, it will definitely pay off. So that's where it all started. The other portion of the business was as an investigation company. We specialized in surveillance technology. So we're very acclimated with working with products, that were, DC voltage products and deploying products out in the field, going where you couldn't just plug something in or throw something up into a rack. It was I came from a very different world that has changed, by the day since then. So I worked with both technologies, bringing everything together and we just ended up doing more automotive technology work and fleet safety work
Hmm.
than anything. So, here we are today. We're in our 21st year, going to our 22nd year, working. I'll just call it automotive fleet safety. And
Right.
we've been in for the long haul. So
Yeah.
that's where we're at today.
Right. Right. That brings up a couple memories of mine. I started Fleetistics 23 years ago, and I used to have to do my own installs, along with technical support, training, administration, and sales. So I was like this one-man band, and after I sold it, if they were nearby, I'd go out and do the installs too. So I got my hands dirty there for a while. I quickly learned that's not me. That's I can do a lot of things, but doing that well was just not one of them. And then you talk about the covert space or some things like that. I can remember doing a presentation for the Secret Service in Washington, and walked up to a building, just a complete blank building. I had a laptop, and we were selling passive technology at the time. Real time technology wasn't even out yet, so We went down into the basement of the garage underneath the facility, and there I am standing with a laptop in my arm trying to make a 900 megahertz system function. And this was back when Geotab still had their software on CDs, right? So it was just this whole calamity of variables that was just never going to ever possibly work. But yeah, for some reason, your comment just sparked that memory for me. It's interesting. So let's see. So is there any type of vehicle that you haven't worked on?
Uh, aviation is something that we'll
Yeah.
never work on just because it's a whole different discipline and set of rules.
Right.
Not too much marine stuff. We've done installations for several agencies on their boats,
Hmm.
and that was more GPS tracking than anything, just to show the location of these boats. And they weren't yachts or anything like that. Just small, I guess, small enforcement
Right.
uh, boats, if you want to call it that, or enforcement vessels. So we've worked on those, and
Yeah.
that's been pretty much it. But again, track, it has tracks, wheels, pulleys, and engine, and now electrics and hybrids. We haven't done all of it, but we've done a good fair share. So
So most of
that's
our listeners are going to be fleet operators. They're going to have vehicles, pickup trucks, cars, semis, tandem axle, those types of vehicles, and then they're going to have yellow iron, forklifts, and things like that. I'm assuming you worked with all those things.
no, you mentioned yellow iron. Yeah, we kind of embraced yellow iron because it was a whole separate science all to itself. From what are the owners looking for to placement of devices on all iron machines, and learning about safety features and things that you can't touch because of OSHA. So it's a whole yellow iron is a discipline. It's definitely not just we could just plug it in and it'll work scenario
Yeah.
with that.
And I noticed you have an excavator on your table behind you.
Yeah. Yeah, little Cat 336 that we
Right.
actually use it sometimes for demonstrations for things, for rollover, demonstrating safety stuff with rollover protection systems and whatnot. So,
Gotcha. Well, let's talk
yeah.
about what a fleet operator, manager, owner should be considering, because oftentimes that they think that they can do it themselves, right? And sometimes they can. I was just at a customer's location in Georgia, and they were paying for installs, and I drove up, and they had 15 bays of qualified mechanics working on every type of vehicle that they had. And we were wondering, well, why would they outsource like service work? And oftentimes we'll tell customers, hey, to get the heavy lift done, you should have professionals come in and then do the installs, because they get it done very quickly and correctly the first time. It's not a 6-month rollout; it's a 1-month rollout. You're getting your ROI in 30 days instead of 6 months. Because when you don't get your ROI, that's money that you can never get back, right? It's opportunity cost that is gone forever. So if you can do it faster, efficiently, it's pretty easy to do the math to find out, all right, well, if it costs me X amount of dollars to hire someone to do it, and I can get the ROI in 30 days versus 6 months, I'm actually saving X amount of dollars in ROI. So under what kind of conditions or what thought process would you say someone needs to be working through to determine what's going to make the best scenario for them for installation, either with a professional or trying to figure out if they can do it themselves?
There's a few things to take into consideration. Yeah, and again, like you mentioned, a fleet manager that does have a shop at bays. I'm just going to use an example. Fleet manager of say 500 vehicles. Um, they're going to have their own mechanics, their own in-house people. And we could get to the inner core of this. Got 500 vehicles, all shapes and sizes, from yellow iron to I'll call it mostly white fleet, which is fine. Maybe some Class 8 stuff. Let's use a typical county organization. Well, let's go even deeper. Look at your mechanics. What are your guys comfortable with? A lot of managers are going to expect their mechanics to be. I mean, even if you're ASC certified and have multiple certifications, there's guys that just don't want to work with electric. They just don't like it. They refuse to do it. It's almost the same thing as saying we expect you, because you're a mechanic, to rebuild a transmission. Well, a guy may turn around and say, I don't do transmissions. We send those out to the transmission shop. Well, why? You said you could do everything. Yes, I can, but there's limitations to everybody. And automotive electronics, because of the changes, intricacies, some people are just not comfortable with it. I think if you have a shop with, say, 25 mechanics in there, maybe 3 of the 25 will be able to get into electronics. Let's take it even further. You go to a dealership, whether it be a Packard, Freightliner, or even Mack, not all of those guys on that shop floor are going to be doing electronics. And they'll be the first ones to tell you, I don't do that. We have a guy that does that, and that's all he does. So even the dealerships have diversified and specialized their talent on the floor and delegated certain tasks to them to keep the guys that are great at doing it, let them keep doing it. The guys that are weak on it, that don't want to do it, don't let them do it. So as a fleet manager now, you're not running a dealership, okay? You're not for profit. You're there you're there for efficiency. So do you want to break all your guys off of doing, brakes and tires and PMs and maintenance or federal mandated inspections to figure out how to put these GPS units in? Do you want to have them try to figure out how to make them work, how to check them into a system, how to make sure they're properly placed? Yeah, you're at the end of the day, you're looking for a certain way to wire something into a vehicle, but this is 2024, and you just can't hunt for connections with a test light anymore. Those days are long gone. And there's certain intricacies and things that you need to know in order to hook up a device. It's more than just plugging into a fuse panel. So again, if you balance it out, as you had mentioned, yes, a fleet manager is going to and again, we've worked with guys that are running fleets from 100 to thousands of vehicles, and they'll all tell you the same thing. Sometimes we'll have our mechanics do it, but for the most part, we want guys to come in. We'll provide them with a vehicle list. We'll provide them with the equipment. We expect them to know their product and know the protocol, know the process of installing the device, making it work, and installing it in a fashion to where it meets, we'll call it fleet standard, and it will perform for the life of the device, which could be from, say, 3 to 7 years until a technology change calls for, a removal replacement. So the experienced fleet managers will understand this. And at the end of the day, you already have, say, dispatch and operations fighting with the shop over getting vehicles out. Well, now do you want to make that, increase the fight and the volume of the fight, make it even worse because now your mechanic, nope, they said we have to put all these in. That's one more task that we have to do in addition to our current workload. So, most fleet managers would say, Mitch, we're going to give you and your guys these 2 bays over here. We've got drivers that are going to run vehicles in. And, so to answer your question, the fleet managers are bringing in professional installers, when needed to help increase the efficiency of the operation, reduce downtime, and reduce taking your designated people off of their needed duties to do something such as this. And again, it alleviates the fight between operations and maintenance. Vehicle availability increases if you time it properly and organize it properly. You can have different ways of setting things up to just make the whole flow go smooth. And we've gotten to where we have a process that we'll put in place with an organized fleet manager where we want a list of all your vehicles. If it's going to get touched, we want to see it on a sheet. Share us a list. Share the list with us. They'll share the list. And we'll set up a plan with them and we'll ask questions. It's just, okay, are the mayor and the alderman and the chief of police, the chief of the fire department, we don't want them waiting all day for, solid waste or the electrical department to get done. So we've incorporated little things as setting up speed lanes for high priority vehicles, detectives, guys with take home vehicles, elected officials, visitors, guests, whatever. So we work with the fleet managers, and we ask them questions and we throw options at them to, make their experience, give them a good experience, and of course, get their vehicles done in a timely fashion.
Right.
With all that being said, we can get through 600 to 1,000 vehicles in 4 to 6 weeks, working at a normal 40-hour pace during the week, including, weekends if we need it.
Right.
Everything is done, everything's up and working. That's because we organized it. There's some agencies that they'll just want to take their time with it. We've seen it take over 6 months to 9 months
Yeah.
occasionally for 1,000 units, which is
Well,
upsetting.
that's a kind of an ideal scenario. Our largest deployment was over 5,000 vehicles, and it was 350 plus locations around the country, and all the installs had to be done after like 5:30. So, everybody was working nights and weekends, and it was brutal for quite a long period of time to have people out on the road. And some nights it would be 19 degrees out and their fingers wouldn't even work. So there is a lot that goes into this whole big picture consideration when you start to get into the bigger fleets. Things that you can't bang out in a day or a weekend or something of that nature. The other thing that pops into my mind as you're talking, besides the efficiency, is liability, right? And making the wrong connections. Test lights, it used to be pretty simple. You can hit the test light, you get a positive. Now everything's got a computer in it, right? And hooking up to the wrong lines potentially could run into problems. And then also the big one I'm always scared about is someone running a line across the airbag. Running it up the A-pillar and crossing over the airbag instead of going behind it. And then that airbag deploys, and that cable prevents the airbag from deploying correctly. And everybody's in trouble at that point. And people that don't do this every day are not going to be paying attention to that type of little detail that makes a huge difference in someone's safety, ultimately, at the end of the day.
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah. And like I said, there's a lot of different intricacies that are involved with it. And somebody had asked me in another conversation once, well, we believe that everybody can go to self-installs. Well, you can if you have the people to do it. But again, let's look at this from a different direction. It's a plumbing company. It's a heating and air company. They deliver auto parts. Surely they can do their own installs. Well, let's be realistic. Sometimes you could plug a device into an OBD2 port, but how long before it gets kicked off, it gets kicked out, it goes down in the sewer, it falls into the drain, it gets wet, ran over. Yeah. And, expecting somebody behind the desk, the receptionist, to come out, and here, go put these in. They said anybody can do it. Watch the 3-minute video and we'll be up and running. Well, yeah. Okay, so maybe it has worked under different conditions, but the efficiency, the longevity, and the actual devices working the way they're supposed to be working is a completely different story. So, pro installs do have their advantage. They do have disadvantages from a cost perspective, but as far as efficiency and reliability and meeting a standard and having the devices perform the way they're supposed to, pro install method is not a bad way to go.
We used to have only 3-wire installs before the OBD devices came out, right? And they were tampered with every day of the week, just like the OBD devices. And everybody thought, oh, well, I'm going to get an OBD device, and oh my God, all the installers are going out of business because they're just going to plug it in and everything's going to be perfectly okay with an OBD install. And then, well, obviously people kicked it out and people were tampering with it in the OBD port because they can see it right in front of them with the lights on. So then they had to go to a T-harness, right, which now goes basically back to, we got to drop the dash, we got to find a place to mount it, we got to put it in the vehicle. And that gets tampered with too every now and then. But tampering is just something that has always been part of the equation. But there hasn't been a technology shift that has actually eliminated the need for professional, knowledgeable installation services, right? And everybody thought this OBD thing was going to put everybody out of business. And honestly, I wasn't quite sure at the time that it happened, but it hasn't, and it won't. It's not going away, especially with dash cams coming online. And dash cams are, the next most important thing in fleet management is getting dash cams. So let me ask you this: what makes a good customer in your eyes?
I think for the most part, most customers are great customers. I think they can become, I won't say bad customers, but just maybe a little more difficult or challenging to deal with, because some of them have had really bad experiences, as far as fleet managers go or service goes. One of the biggest things that I see today that everybody faces, and this will either make or break to her customer, make a customer a great customer or bad, is service. If they have to send 36 emails and make 36 phone calls to get a technician to come out or have anybody help them with the device, if they can't get this done within less than 3 emails or phone calls, then they're going to become a bad customer. I don't care if they're the sweetest person on earth or the most vicious, but when they have to spend a part of their day, chasing people or a process to make their device work that they were pretty much promised and guaranteed would be trouble-free, that makes a bad customer. A good customer, from our perspective, is we can meet with them easily. They'll make some time to talk with us about the procedure and the process. They'll ask for opinion. They'll give us ideas and give us things to work with. They'll take delivery of the devices. They'll make the vehicles available to us with keys for all the vehicles. I'm sorry, if you have 100 vehicles sitting in the lot and somebody dumps a box of keys on the back of a pickup truck bed and said, "Here you go, boys." Well, if you have 100 vehicles, you just added 30 minutes times 100 to hunting down vehicles and finding out what key goes to what. And if they collect them at the end of the day, well, now you've lost, you just do the math, 30 times 100 times a 7-day install period. It's a lot of time wasted, but the better customers, the happy, good customers have been through this before. They know that the installers are going to come in. They need keys for the vehicles. They need a place to work. They need a list. Don't just tell us don't do those 4 over there, because what if those 4 move 5 times during the day? And they're all Ford F-150s or Chevy Express vans. I mean, it's a little hard to keep up. So if they're very definitive with what they want, just tell us, we want to know what their expectations are, just like they want to know what ours are. Mm-hmm. So we try to share the same goal with the customers, and their goal at the end is to have the devices up and reporting with minimal challenges of having to know what's in what.
Yeah.
And when we can make that happen with no downtime, hiccups, damage, or incidents on site, that makes a good customer.
As a telematics provider, what we like to see is, the pre-project coordination meetings where a customer will listen and take our advice, since, you guys and ourselves have done this so many times before, that we can guide them through a process that's going to be the most efficient possible, that's going to deliver the best end result. It may not always be the easiest in every scenario. They may have operational requirements that are going to be challenging, but there's not too many things that we haven't seen at this point after 23 years of doing this that we can't come up with the plan that's going to be the most efficient and the least impactful on their day-to-day operations. So listening and taking advice and communicating well. When we send an email, we don't want to wait a week to get a response, or somebody has to go get permission to do something. We don't want to wait a week to get a response. Timely communication is one of the biggest things that we see. And, if somebody sees something that isn't quite right, let's get on the phone. Let's talk real quick. We'll talk through it, hammer it out, and then move on to the next thing. So that's what I look for in a good customer. Communication, that partnership, that teamwork. We're here to do something for you, but in return for what we're doing, we need your assistance, and that helps.
Yeah, and I agree 100%. There's something else that you reminded me of is, I think the pre-planning, any of us can pretty much walk in. Customer has, say, up to 50 vehicles. We don't need a whole lot of pre-planning, but we do like to, reach out and say hello and, find out what their expectations are, whether, regardless of who scheduled it. But as you get into doing more vehicles, the other thing is the pre-planning meetings are super important, but the big thing about the pre-planning meeting is a lot of times we don't have a person who's going to have boots on the ground at the install site that's going to be able to round up the vehicles, get us keys, tell us who's on break, who's on vacation. And sometimes our meetings may go, as 6 to 9 months before we even open a box with a device in it on their property. So, prior planning and, with the right people, it's great to talk to whether it be the city manager, the fleet manager, assistant fleet manager, but also we like to get let's talk to your head mechanic on site. And a lot of times these guys are left out, and this isn't in a bad way, but some of them are actually disappointed that they weren't involved in the actual process. But these are the same guys that will tell you, these vehicles will only be here Wednesday. These 4 are at the auction. These 2 got sold. These 4 are at the body shop. Those guys know what we need to know, and they have access to what we have to have access with. And I think some of our better customers will actually, well, I should say are better, but some of the customers that have done this more frequently will involve their mechanics or their, I guess, somebody that's maybe 2 steps lower than them as far as, the leadership team goes. And we love to know who that is, because, who is the one guy that can make things happen? What is his name and phone number? Yeah. And I think that's so important with any fleet deployment for anything.
Yeah, absolutely. Once that corporate decision's made and that project gets communicated down to the branch, now we want to be working with the branches, right? We have a big picture. We got a game plan up here, but now we need contact with the branches, because that's where all the final coordination is going to take place. When things go wrong, no one's calling the corporate office to say, hey, a vehicle didn't show up. We got to call the branch. Where's that vehicle? What happened to it? How do we need to adapt? What changes need to be made? What problems are we going to run into? Who do we need to be talking to? If this is being done after hours, who can we call? If a problem happens, which happens all the time. So you're right. Local communication is ultimately where the project gets done after it's approved and then mandated down through the chain of command. Okay. 1 or 2 more quick questions. Got any good stories for us about installations that went wrong, or?
I could tell some stories about installs that have gone bad, and typically they haven't. You can have problems with everybody and anything. I mean, there's a human factor that's involved with this. I don't care if you have a plug and play device or a 3-wire device getting, snow plow inputs or something that's very complex. Some of the biggest horror stories, or the biggest thing that I hate to hear of or be faced with, is companies will release devices where they will tell you, hey, we can fix anything with an over-the-air firmware update, and there's some companies that are very capable of doing that. They do it well. We had one instance where we installed devices for a police department that was related to an airport, and we did all this work over a 3-day period. It started on a Friday and ran all through until Sunday night. Monday morning at 4 a.m., my cell phone was ringing. It's like, we don't know what's going on, but a few of our devices are stuck out on the field, and they have completely shut down. And of course, I started asking questions. What kind of device? Chevy Tahoes with police packages. Chevy Malibus. Just different Chevys had issues. We also ran into the same thing with Ford. In all fairness, what it was is, I actually had to do a lot of research on this to get the straight story. And this is where being a member of good professional organizations is key. SAE being one of them. And, come to find out, Chevrolet does something with their police package where there's a constant request for the VIN of the vehicle. And if the request goes through too many times by more than one device, what happens is the ECM of the vehicle says basically, all right, we're going to shut down. We're not going to fight anymore. We're done. We're shutting down. Right. And for some reason, it happened primarily with police packages. Now, we've run into instances where some emergency vehicles will have radar units that plug into OBD2. It's a very simple plug-in. It's not a permanent thing.
Yep.
And what it's called I think the code was Bravo Fox 7, a BF7 VIN request code. And what that is when you have multiple devices requesting the VIN, again, the computer says, I've had enough, and it shuts down. We've also seen this with vehicles that have wheelchair lifts,
right,
and vehicles that have factory power takeoff in there, or a power takeoff where it requires the idle speed of the vehicle to increase through the use of, say, a computer or technology that's feeding off of the engine control module. So once again, the vehicle gets into an internal fight. Drivers in that wheelchair lift van full of passengers, next thing you know, they're in an intersection, the vehicle shuts down and it won't start.
Right.
Well, and this has been, and we've seen this over the years, especially with some of the devices. But as these instances have come up, the better providers have addressed this immediately. They figured out what the problem was. They had good contacts with SAE and the manufacturers and the people that are writing code and writing the firmware for the ECMs, for the manufacturers, and they were able to put this to bed and make different options available in the GPS device or the telematic device. So we're not going to interfere with this VIN request anymore. We're just going to do GPS.
Right.
So there's there's companies that have been very proactive with this, but for me, it's a horror story because again, 4 a.m. I got 4 officers that are down on my field, and we're going to have to send a wrecker out to drag their vehicles back into the shop. You know what's going to happen?
Yeah.
First response is, we don't cut any wiring. All we did was plug your devices in.
Right.
So I don't know what to tell you, but that's my first thought, and that's the first explanation to a good customer. A customer that's more technically savvy will work on it with them and come up with a solution. So that's one horror story.
All right, Mitch. Well, thank you very much for the story. Those kind of nightmares keep us all awake at night, and hopefully, if a fleet manager is going through this process, they're working with a company like yours to get it done and get it done right. And when problems happen, how do those problems get handled is key. So I want to thank you for your time and your insight, and hopefully this video is going to help some fleet managers out there make the right choice that's going to help them achieve their goals more effectively and drive their return on investment. Hopefully this helps. If you appreciate the video and the content, please hit the like button. Consider subscribing to the Fleetistics channel, and we'll see you on the next video. Thank you and have a great day.